Hello everyone and welcome to session 5 of the Business School Leaders Forum, brought to you by GoToWebinar by LogMeIn. I'm happy to say that I'm joined by Ellen van der Woersner, who is Segment Marketing Director for Learning Experience at Barco, and she'll be presenting on how virtual and hybrid classrooms are transforming online learning. So in a moment, I'm going to pass over to Ellen, but before I do, I'd just like to let everyone know that this session will be interactive with polls. There will be a video and we'll get to a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop them into the question tab and hopefully we get to answer all of them. If we do not get a chance to answer all the questions, these will be passed over to Ellen, who'll be able to answer them and get back to you. So without further ado, I'll now pass over to Ellen.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning for some. Welcome in this session. In this session, I'm going to explain how we see at Barco online distance learning transforming with virtual and hybrid virtual classrooms. I try to make the session as interactive as possible, and at the end, I'll leave enough room for questions. So my name is Ellen van der Woersner. I'm the Segment Director Learning Experiences at Barco. And before I dive into my topic, a quick recap on Barco. Who are we? In the left-hand top side, you see our building. We're a Belgian company active in entertainment, in healthcare, and in enterprise. But most people perhaps don't even know, will not know the name Barco, but they will recognize the little button at the top, which is actually ClickShare. So it's this little dongle which you might have in your meeting rooms or lecture halls or training rooms. So at Barco, we're not only about ClickShare, we don't only sell projectors or sell projectors to movie theaters or to healthcare, but we also have a division which is focused on learning technology. And I'm specifically dedicated to the go-to-market on learning technology, where we're aiming at business school, universities, and corporate learning and development. Barco, it's an old company. We're more than 80 years old. We're globally present in every part of the globe. And I think what's our DNA is we co-create with partners and customers. And the hybrid and virtual classrooms have also been co-created with universities and business schools. And I'll tell more about that in a minute. So, but let's take a step back. The future of work. I think World Economic Forum Future of Job Reports points out very precisely that the future of work, the future of learning is undergoing a major transformation. We do see that the learning market is changing drastically. And I think COVID-19 especially has accelerated certain things. I observe three different things. I observe that lifelong learning is changing. Everybody is thinking on how are we going to upskill and reskill our employees? How are we going to make sure that students are going to be employees of the future? And therefore, we do see that lifelong learning becomes more and more important. We do see more programs coming up on adult learning or specific programs, especially for in business schools for corporate environments. So really learning programs that will help us to cope with Industrial Revolution 4.0 and where Education 4.0 will adapt. Secondly, new business models. We do see in the education or in the learning market a lot, everybody's thinking about new business models. And the main thing around the new business models is shorter pathways. I think AMBA also in research, which it recently did, is mentioning that people are reinventing the way that they will deliver programs. It's no longer about long programs, 4 years, 5 years, but it's going to be more and more about shorter courses, shorter pathways, and blended learning. And especially whether it's an MBA or an executive MBA or specialized classes, it's all about how are we going to cope with different pathways, blended pathways, and what will we do with all what they call shadow education players, which are popping up, which are not business schools or university, or we do not even have a learning background. And thirdly, learning experience. Everybody today is really talking about learning experience. I was doing 2 weeks ago a session with AMBA, a roundtable with deans of business schools, and the word experience really was the main theme in the 2 hours discussion. How do we cope with learning experience, and what learning experience do you want to deliver to your customers? And when we think about learning experience as a vendor of learning technology, we see technology as an enabler. Technology is not the goal, but technology can help you to deliver the best learning experience for your customers. So 3 big trends, but what about COVID-19? COVID-19 has really accelerated the adoption of online learning. And that's probably not something I will have to convince you about, but is COVID-19 really a catalyst for innovation? I think there are different ways to look at it. And I'll come back, is it really a catalyst for innovation? We see that COVID-19 has pushed us in certain ways. So social distancing has a big effect, where before online learning and especially when I look at business schools and universities, online learning and technology as an enabler, everybody was looking at online programs. I think the social distancing gives us a drastic change, because today we see that most of the schools we talk to are not only thinking anymore about only their online programs, but they're at the same time thinking, what am I going to do in September when my campus-based programs come back? And how am I going to cope with the social distancing? And how am I going to give access to those students who perhaps cannot even fly and attend my course? So we see social distancing forces schools to think of online program delivery, but then also how am I going to embed online or remote teaching for campus-based program. Next to it, we see a lot going on about online differentiation. In the US, there was a Saturday night live show which was somehow making fun about the online offering of MBA programs. For example, what is the experience you want to give to your students, and how are we going to online differentiate when everybody is going to offer online courses at the same price as on-campus based programs? I read a very interesting article, and the journalist was writing when Hollywood meets Harvard. And that's actually exactly what we see where differentiation is going to. Is what type of experience, and the entertainment industry is all about experiences. What type of experience do we want to merge together with educational objectives, with learning outcome, and with the way we deliver programs? So social distancing, online differentiation, and then anytime, anywhere. We do see that one of the strategic priorities given by Gartner actually is growth. How can you grow your programs while respecting social distancing, thinking about online differentiation, and without expanding physically? How can you really grow? And I think in the AMBA research, for example, alliances is a way to grow. How are you going to form alliances with other business schools? How are you going to give access to other students anytime, anywhere, in order to really grow your enrollment and grow your number of programs? And then virtual challenges. Actually, what you see, the graph that you see is pointing out top challenges of virtual training. And as in learning and development in corporates, a lot of research has been done. These are the results of that research. And what we see is that top challenges in virtual training are really the first three are unprepared participants. How do you prepare your participants? Do they need to download something? How do they get used to the technology? What is their experience with the technology? But then you have technology challenges. Can we really hear and see everybody? Can we engage with the people? And also unengaged participants, how do we make sure that our participants are engaged? And I often refer to that experience where you in a video conferencing call and you think, I'm going to mute myself and put my video off, and at the same time, I'm going to do two different things. So we do see that unengaged participants is something that is a real challenge that people today are facing in virtual training. So catalysts for innovation, to come back on the main question, we can look at it at two ways. I heard a business school saying, I'm not sure if COVID-19 is really going to be a catalyst for innovation, because everybody has been forced so quickly to switch and adapt that probably the way they look at the pedagogy and the learning technology that enables them, even the design of the room, is not necessarily the best experience we're delivering today. So COVID-19 will be a catalyst for innovation if we really look at those different measurements, and if we really think about, okay, now we've moved quickly and we took the first setup we could get a hold of, but what is the ultimate goal and what's the learning outcome we really want to achieve? So that brings me to experience as a differentiator. I really believe in what I would call the ecosystem approach, because it's always pedagogy first. And we, even as a technology vendor, we're not making technology for the purpose of making technology. It is, what is the pedagogy? How are you going to virtually engage your participants? What do you want to reach? What's the learning outcome? And then it's going to bring you to, what's my spatial design? How does my room or my virtual location will look like? How can that support my pedagogy? And then you'll come to, what type of edtech, what type of learning platform do I need? I think today the beauty of how the world has moved is there's a lot of technology, and if you use the design of the room, the design of the course, and enable that with a learning platform that can help you, you can even reach a much richer experience and a much better learning outcome. So pedagogy as your first goal, supported by spatial design and learning platform, because not every learning technology is fit for purpose. So what type of spaces do we see starting to proliferate? Whereas in, I would say, before March, we saw a lot of people were talking about active learning spaces, collaboration rooms, huddle spaces as well, in addition to traditional type of classroom setups and lecture halls. I think in business schools, all of those spaces exist, but we do see that today, most of the questions we're getting in a COVID-19 situation is not anymore about classrooms, lecture halls, or campus-based rooms. It's really about virtual spaces. It's not only about virtual classrooms where you put everybody virtually in front of you, it's also a lot about hybrid virtual classrooms. How are you going to combine physical students and virtual students? How do you make sure that the teacher or the faculty has a very good experience, but at the same time your participants were paying for your courses? How do you make sure that they get the best experience? And we see that now the real focus is on virtual and hybrid virtual classroom, and we also believe that's going to continue for the time being. We also see that some of our customers who have been using our weConnect learning technology for their active collaboration rooms, actually right now they have repurposed their active learning spaces and they all turn them into a virtual classroom. And then it really comes down to, have you chosen a technology that enables you to quickly change in times where the business suddenly needs to adapt very quickly. So when we see learning, and I've talked about blended learning paths, and that's also where we see that the future lies, we do see 3 different pillars of learning. We see classroom-based learning, which used to be what most people did, and the percentages you see above come from the American Association of Talent Development, where 54% of the members who answered said that most of their courses are still classroom-based. We do know that classroom-based learning and face-to-face learning has a value. It is very interactive. People connect still when they're physically together in a classroom. We also know that learning outcome is positively influenced by that, but it's not very convenient. In times like today, where you have travel bans, where you have quarantine periods, it's not that easy to move people around, but we do believe that classroom-based learning still will continue to have a role to play in the future. Then next to that, we see e-learning, which is a platform when people move from classroom-based learning to virtual. Most of the people thought about asynchronous learning. If we think about e-learning, most of us will not link that to live, but they will link that to asynchronous, own-paced type of learning. So 29% of the respondents answered that they're doing their courses by e-learning. We know for e-learning, it's not very interactive, and you can insert polls and quizzes in your e-learning, but we know that there is no peer-to-peer collaboration, and that's also a way people learn, by the peer-to-peer collaboration. So not very interactive. Learning outcome. A lot has been written on e-learning outcome, and when courses tend to be longer or run for a longer period of time, we do see a lot of people actually drop out. So they never reach the ultimate learning outcome because they drop out before the end of the course. But it is very convenient, and I also believe that e-learning can be a methodology which is a perfect methodology when you think about blended learning paths. So in the middle, we have virtual classrooms. What we see as a technology company is a very big shift. Before, everybody was convinced about classroom-based learning. Everybody has been convinced and has been adopting e-learning through different platforms. But virtual classrooms before, not everybody has really considered that. And we see that there has not been a lot of maturity in certain industries on adopting virtual classrooms. Most of the virtual classrooms currently have been run out of conventional video conferencing systems. Video conferencing systems like Zooms, like Skype, like GoToWebinar, which really, when we look deeper, people complain about interactivity. It's not very interactive. It's very one-directional. So think about case-based discussion methodology. In a conventional video conferencing system, it's very hard to achieve that. So lack of interactivity. Therefore, you don't really know what the learning outcome is, because we don't recognize body language. We don't see what people think, what people say, how their body language confirms. So we know that on video conferencing system for virtual classroom applications are not performing really well on the outcome. In the middle, convenience, virtual classroom live sessions like this one. You had to log in on this time to attend this session. So they're not as convenient as e-learning, but they're more convenient than classroom-based learning. So at Barco, when we think about what I mentioned in the beginning on co-creation, we work together with IESSE Business School and University of Leuven, and we said, okay, we want to achieve a synchronous learning, which comes fairly close to a classroom-based experience. And we really want to work on the pain points which we've seen in the past on how do you enhance interactivity, how do you engage participants, and how do you measure learning outcome. So with our weConnect virtual classroom software, that's where we really focused on the interactivity, on the outcome to enhance virtual classroom experience. So we also looked on how can you combine classroom-based learning and virtual classrooms in one way, and that's really, and this is a picture of the setup of University of Leuven, where they're combining physical students with virtual students in one classroom. And we all encourage you, the University of Leuven published some papers, and I can, if you get in contact with me, I can send you the link. They did academic research on what's the advantage of a hybrid classroom system for students, but also for faculty members to manage that situation. So time for a small poll. I would like, as I'm trying to be as interactive as possible in this session, what is the percentage growth you foresee at your business school for the coming year when you think about virtual classrooms or real-time virtual instructor-led teaching? And I'll give you a few minutes to answer.
Okay, Ellen, so the poll is up. We'll give the audience a few moments to answer the question. So we'll just wait. Okay, so we've had 39% say less than 50%, 52% say 50 to 100%, 6% say 100%, and 3% say more than 100%.
Okay, that's I think that really reflects, because most of you are in business schools. I've seen in the corporate learning and development, which are often your customers, that's exactly the same indication I'm getting from heads of corporate learning. We do see that most people foresee quite tremendous growth. And I think it's pretty interesting. ATD, if you look at their research, 2019 over 2018, it was only 3% up for the virtual classrooms. I'm sure in 2020, as you also all indicated, we will really see a tremendous growth on the virtual classroom pillar. So how can virtual and hybrid classrooms help? We see virtual and hybrid classrooms help in a blended learning path, because you can also record your virtual and hybrid classrooms and make those recordings available in an e-learning format or for student reference. But they help on several ways. They help you to really be compliant with the social distance measurements that we still have, and which we will still probably have in September, when most of the academic years start again. It enables you to think multi-campus. If your business school has multiple locations and you have professors which cannot travel from one location to another, but you still want to give access for your faculty member to teach different students on different campuses, this is an ideal solution which can help you there. It gives you a flexible student experience, and that's actually feedback we got from the University of Leuven, where they were saying that students actually they choose where they want to follow the course from. I found that pretty interesting because their research showed that most of the students in the beginning, they all still came on campus. But after a while, they saw that in a hybrid classroom, they could follow and have a very similar experience from their own remote location. So while in the beginning, most of them really rushed to come and sit in room, people really, after a while, started to join virtually because they joined in and had the same experience. And then faculty experience, the faculty or the teachers, they have an ability to see still the body language of both physical and remote students. For faculty, teaching in, that's at least the experience we've seen with our customers, teaching in a hybrid classroom does take some adaptation, whereas teaching a fully virtual class for the first time, it's easier. How have our customers implemented that challenge? How do you teach in a hybrid setting? Actually, they work with teacher assistants or even students who would assist on the technology adoption for the faculty member, or a kind of an operator who would help the remote students, who would help the teacher in launching the quizzes, the poll, and the engagement tools which are embedded in the system. So we do see that no matter which side you look at, whether you look from a holistic point of view, whether you look from a student experience or from a teacher experience, that's where virtual and hybrid classrooms can help. And the feedback we often get from faculty is that the experience comes fairly close to an in-classroom experience, especially when you're teaching to a whole virtual audience, because you're still performing in front of an audience. So it comes back to the when Hollywood meets Harvard, Harvard being one of the first 10 years ago to start with real-time online virtual classrooms. So coming back to analytics, we do get a lot of questions on analytics, and I think it's a hot topic. And I'm again going to refer to the YAMA research, where data analytics and AI were also pointed out as interesting fields of growth. We do see that analytics can help to improve measurements. And this is a quote we got from IESE Business School, is that actually in a virtual classroom, they can measure much more than in a physical classroom. They can measure how many times people speak, how many times people raise hands. And the beauty is, at the end of every session, all those analytics can be downloaded per participant, per session, and give feedback. They give feedback to the professor, also to the EdTech or the learning technologies group on what can improve in terms of setup and work and teaching workflow, but it also gives feedback on the participants. And we're just one of the systems who can give you the analytics. The power, of course, is bringing your whole blend of pathways back in analytics and then see what are the improvements that you could make. So time for another poll. I would like to understand what type of technology you're currently using when it comes to real-time virtual classrooms.
Okay, Ellen, so the poll has been launched. We'll just let everyone have a few moments to answer. Okay, so we have 78% have said Zoom, 3% have said WebEx, 13% have said Teams, 0% have said Adobe Connect, and 6% have said Other. Okay, I think this pretty well reflects what we have seen, as it's pretty common to use Zoom, especially when you are forced into
into quickly changing, because that's often a video conferencing tool that is already available. What we do see when I come back to online differentiation, the question is, how are you going to online differentiate? What type of experience are you going to deliver? And will you segment per group that you are teaching? What I'm often hearing is that actually business schools start to think about type of program am I going to deliver, who's my audience, and what technology am I going to use depending on the audience. So that's a trend that we also start to observe. So I've talked a lot, but what about applying it in practice? A couple of pictures. So on your left-hand side, you do see the KU Leuven, which actually just won an award, awarded by AVIXA on the best overall AV-enabled education space. And you see their weConnect virtual hybrid classrooms. Then on the right-hand side, a picture of ESSEC Business School in Paris, where they're teaching their executive MBA courses out of the deck, which is enabled with the weConnect software. And at the bottom, you actually see a setup here at Barco campus, because we have a pretty large employee community of almost 4,000 employees, and we're actually also drinking our own champagne, like we like to say it. We're also training our workforce from our virtual classroom. But now, instead of me telling you about our interactions that we have daily with customers, I would like to show a video of IESE Business School in Barcelona, where they're telling what their experience is with our virtual classroom technology. So I hope you enjoyed the movie where IESE Business School is telling you from different angles how they experience the virtual classroom. When we look about the experience, I think the big differentiator that we have seen is this weConnect software. It's a technology which is purpose-built. It's built for training, it's built for rich case discussions, it's built with learning technologists, with universities and with business schools. It's fun to use, it gives a frictionless experience, and it helps to engage. But think about what can a virtual classroom do for you beyond training. It can be used through the whole student life cycle. What about admissions? What about open days? What about alumni get-togethers? So it's really a platform that can help you to manage your whole student life cycle. And actually, I was talking to the head of EdTech of University of Leuven the other day. She was mentioning that they right now are using it for PhD defenses, where you really want a highly interactive, engaging experience for both the professor and the students. And after all, if you look about a hybrid setup, it helps to respect social distancing measurements. So at Barco, we focus on learning experience and learning outcome. We believe weConnect is a learning technology platform which enables and we look from three angles. We look how can we make the experience as engaging as possible for students, but also fun and interactive. How can we help trainers and faculty to move to an engaged, almost in the classroom experience, but backed up with analytics? And how do we help IT and operations to roll systems out like this? How do we drive adoption? Because that's often a key pain point which we see. And then after all, we continuously co-create and research. And that's the beauty of a software system where you can, in an agile way, adopt based on co-creation and make your platform future-proof. So a quick word on, I would like to share how we actually implemented it at Barco University. How did we implement virtual training? So we started with actually 2 virtual classrooms. For the moment, we have 5. We started with a full virtual, and you see the setup is a pretty basic setup. That's also possible. The bottom has a hybrid setup, mixing room seats and virtual seats. And last year, we trained more than 250 people, and 11% of our teaching was done synchronous. And it's being used for everything from a technical product training to reparation training to really personal development training. What's the impact we've created so far? We do see that employee satisfaction went up because people felt more included, especially remote workers who were not headquartered based felt much more included. There was a much stronger engagement from their side. And we also saw that the trainers got much more satisfied, better attention. They can better feel what the unspoken body language tells them. It enables their teaching workflow. And we also have a sustainability objective as a listed company where we're calculating what is the CO2 avoidance, what's the sustainability impact of moving part of our courses to virtual training. So 6 reasons why we believe virtual classrooms are a better choice. It is a software offering which can help you scale to any type of room in a virtual or a hybrid setting. It gives you great engagement levels. For faculty, it's definitely the closest you can get to an in-classroom experience. You can easily integrate it in blended learning. We have integrating APIs with Panopto and Kaltura, and it gives you participation metrics which you haven't seen before. And bringing all the metrics together that you have, or your learning technology or your EdTech lab might have, has a value on improving and differentiating your experience. And after all, it's built with educators, for educators, built for purpose. One almost closing comment, and then I leave the floor open for questions, is where is EdTech going next? And actually, this is part, if you look to the EdTech Europe event, you will find this slide back, and it's something that is really striking. We do see in the different industries that we're looking at, when digital becomes mainstream, experience and life becomes premium. And with the next new normal, that's also what we will see happening. When you think about the music and the entertainment industry, and you especially think about esports, and this, what the picture you see is an esports arena, their esports is combining, it's an experience, it's combining the digital, the virtual, and the live experience, and it's all about the engagement of your audience, the engagement of your participants. But we saw that the music and the entertainment industry has really thought about experiential platforms and live, combining a live and virtual together. Then thinking about the e-commerce and the retail sector, where everybody went online for shopping, shops had to reinvent themselves. And shops today are no longer only physical, they also embed virtual experience. And they combine, again, this virtual and live experience, but they really emphasize on the experience. And referring to Apple shops, which have been one of the first really looking at what is the experience we deliver in a shop, what do we want to give to our customers. And therefore, we really believe, whether you're talking about education, whether you talk about workplace training, that's no exception. We really see, with digital and COVID pushing us to go mainstream, it's all about what is the experience that you want to deliver to your customers, to your audience, to your students, and to your faculty. So you can start as small or as big as you wish, hybrid or fully virtual, and scale on your needs for any type of learning spaces. But I hope our message is clear. We really believe in differentiating experiences and thinking about what's the next experience that your faculty, your school wants to deliver online. So if you want to experience it more yourself, we are giving monthly live sessions, and there are actually 2 sessions tomorrow. So I would say I'll put the link also in the chat, and you can register still today to experience one of our live sessions. But now I'll open the floor to questions.
Thanks, Helen. So we've had a few questions come in. So just before we go to the questions, if anyone has got any further questions, please feel free to type them into the question tab, and hopefully we can get through them all. So the first question which has come in is, do you think the same technology can be used to teach all programs, or does the technology need to be segmented for different needs?
Okay, that's a very good question. Actually, I do think you will need to think about your audience. There are 2 different ways to look at it. You can look on what do I want to achieve? Is my class 50 or an 80-person classroom, or is it a 500 student classroom we're all following live? If you're going to go for 500 students classroom, and that's the type of course you're aiming at, a large group, then probably your virtual classroom the technology that you choose will need to be adapted. So it depends on how many people do you really want to give an engaging experience, how many people can interact. You can manage 100 students who are going to simultaneously all be front row students, but you probably, if you're thinking about 500 or 1,000 student classrooms, you probably will want to pick a different type of technology, and you also will give a different type of experience.
Excellent, thank you. So we've got another question. How can business schools best support their students and faculty in making the move online?
Okay, it's a question we get in almost every conversation we have, and I think there are a couple of best practices which we can see. So I've seen business schools or management schools who actually made a specific enrollment. So they chose a virtual classroom, they chose our virtual classroom technology, then they pitched it to all faculty members, and then the faculty members who wanted to pick it up, they looked with the EdTech and with the learning technologists together if their program was fit for purpose. Then they worked individually with that faculty member, and then those faculty members became advocates, and then that's how they rolled it out. So they kind of rolled it out in a pilot way, but they really pitched the technology, and they saw who were the front runners who wanted to take it up. In a Norwegian university we were talking to 2 weeks ago, they actually made faculty apply, and they had a whole program worked out, which I found very interesting, where faculty really had to defend why they wanted to adopt it, how they would adopt it, and how they would roll it out. And what we also see is that there's a crucial role for learning technologists or learning designers to really help faculty to adopt. Actually, one comment we heard is that when the learning technologist or the EdTech lab helps faculty to adopt online, they measured what the performance was of the professor online, and then they saw actually when that professor was teaching on a campus-based program, that his performance also went up. But that was something the EdTech lab would guide every individual faculty member to adopt. I think what we also see is, can you use students to help people overcome some first hesitations with technologies? Of course, you can think about a technical or an operator person in every room when you roll out a program in the first steps. But then the question is, do you have additional headcount to support that? The workaround or the things that we see is that, what is the role of teaching assistants? What's the role of the student body in driving also adoption? And I think that these are questions to consider and to identify when you're rolling out virtual classrooms like ours.
Amazing. So got another question. During COVID-19, we experienced various bandwidth issues. What would be your advice to schools using hybrid classrooms when dealing with these issues?
Yeah, I think the bandwidth thing, there are different ways to look at it. I think infrastructure nowadays at the school side is important. And we also see that preparing your infrastructure when you're implementing or rolling out learning technologies is very crucial. At the side of the students, that's something you don't control. So it is important students have a normal bandwidth, and that they preferably they don't have to download on any apps. because that's where, especially if you're going to talk to corporate students, that's where you're going to have difficulties. So my advice would be, make sure your IT department is involved and validates and helps to implement, to embed a learning technology and to roll out like a weConnect virtual classroom at your school, and then also educate your students on what they are supposed to do, and make sure that they can just access by a browser without downloading software, because that's where it often we see it often going wrong.
Excellent. So we've got another question. How can Education 4.0 support creativity and innovation among students?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer, but we do see that students learn. We know we learn by doing, we learn by collaborating, and the smallest percentage is we learn by formal teaching. I would say how students collaborating in a virtual way, that's definitely a skill that every one of us is today is something that you need to have. And I think students need to be prepared on how can they collaborate virtually, how can they collaborate with technology in a virtual way, but also in a physical way. How can you does your faculty have active learning rooms, or technology enhanced active learning spaces, or collaboration rooms? So I think from a technology point of view, I would really encourage students to work with platforms, to experience virtual collaboration, because these are skills. When we think today about Education 4.0, it's no longer on how much knowledge can you transfer. It's on how can you do critical thinking, how can you collaborate, how can you communicate effectively, physically, and in a remote way. And I think that that's where technology also helps, because they will push your students to acquire those skills which will be needed for the future.
Fantastic. So we've got a few more questions which have come in. So how can business schools ensure that networking opportunities are still valuable when moving programs online?
I'm not sure if I fully get that question. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. How can business schools ensure that networking opportunities are still valuable when moving programs online?
Okay, and then you're talking about the networking between the participants. That's where we believe in the power of blended learning. So depending on your program, think of if you have a 4 weeks program, can you bring your students 1 week on campus so they get that human connection, the human touch, and then you're going to bring them in an online virtual classroom? So is there any physical component that you can embed in your learning paths? Then I think another way, if you have a fully online course, how can you get a couple of icebreakers? How can you do a couple of breakout rooms? How can you force students to collaborate before they're coming to your first virtual classroom? Because that's how people are going to get the human connection. So there will need to be moments where they're going to individually collaborate with each other, ideally in a blended way, combining physical and hybrids and virtual together.
Thank you. So we've got time for 2 more questions. So the first one is sort of almost 2 questions in one. So it is, how can business school faculty ensure that students are remaining engaged when they are behind the screen? Also, how can business schools measure the impact of their online initiatives?
Okay, so on the first, we do believe I get the point, and that's also where the polling comes in. When you're using Zoom and you're teaching as a faculty member from behind your computer, I often hear people saying that they on purpose limit the number to max 15 participants. And that's solely because if you're teaching from behind a computer and you really want to keep your audience engaged, it's going to be very hard with a video conferencing platform. So we really believe visualize your participants, make sure that your teacher is in front of an audience in a classroom, and whether all his students are virtually or they're mixed, make sure he sees his students as he would see in a normal classroom, because in that way the teaching workflow, the teacher experience is much more engagement. It's his natural habitat, so to say, where your teacher really sees and can immediately engage. If you think about the virtual setup at IESE, the participants who are at the left, they will have a view on the professor from the left-hand side. The ones who are at the right, they will have a view from the right-hand side. And the audience for the teacher is also directional. So it means that if a person from the left speaks, the audio will come from the left. And in that way, your teacher feels like he's teaching the normal way that he's used to, and that will make your audience much more engaged. In terms of impact, we do encourage, especially when you roll out virtual classrooms, to measure and to do surveys. We've seen at some of our customers, when they rolled it out, they did surveys every session, a survey with the professor, a survey with the participants, and then they look back on what they could improve for the next class. For example, they saw in the beginning that it makes sense the first time students have to adopt the virtual classroom technology, that the day before the session, they have half an hour where they really encourage students to register, to come in a session, to really experience the technology before the formal class starts. So impact is about what do you measure and what do you do with what you've measured, and who's going to help you, your staff and your students to make improvements in an agile way.
Thanks, Ellen. So we've got time for one last question. So the question is, do you have any predictions of the future of technology in IT, especially its use within universities?
We do see a couple of things. I think we do see, when we think on a university, we see that business or management schools of universities tend to be the trendsetters. They're the ones who pick up innovation the quickest. Universities, we've seen in the past that IT infrastructure of universities has, in some countries especially, and then it's not very good. So investing in IT infrastructure is very important, and working from a holistic view, because it's not only about what are we going to do with our IT infrastructure when we do a virtual classroom, but you will need your IT infrastructure everywhere. So I think we see the most successful projects we have and the best implementations. It's where I think your dean or your head of the program sets the vision. The learning technology department or the EdTech lab is going to look what is the best platform to enable what we're trying to achieve and how can we measure improvement. And then it's also having the IT department in from the beginning on what's the best way to roll it out and what are requirements that we will need, how do we need to set it up, and what are requirements which can help us today but can also help us in the future. And there we see that business schools have and also corporates are quicker in picking this up than most of the university programs, because often they look faculty by faculty, which is not the best in terms of when you're trying to manage IT implementations.
Thank you, Ellen. So unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. So obviously, any unanswered questions will be passed on to Ellen and she'll get in touch. So just before we go, we have plenty more sessions coming up. Tomorrow we have 2 sessions. The first one is taking place at 2 p.m. BST time, and that's with Patty Brown and Denise Morissette from ESSEC Business School, who'll be presenting on building a strategy to deliver specialist business school programs. So I've copied the link into the chat. So if you'd like to attend that session, please use the link and register. Also inside the chat, we've got the recordings of the first 3 sessions. So if you'd like to review them again, you can head over to the page and review them. So lastly, I'd just like to thank Ellen again for a fantastic webinar, and I look forward to seeing everyone on another webinar shortly.